already, or you can always use the learning guide in the description below. You could digital ink on that or print it off. So you're gonna do the lesson opener, pause the video, try it. I want you to do it no calculator. Even if you make a mistake, that's okay because we want to learn from mistakes. Remember, as you go through evaluating expressions, to use PEMDAS. PEMDAS is parentheses first, then exponents next, then multiply, divide in order from left and right. One's not more important than the other. And finally add and subtract. Again, one's not more important than the other, just go left to right. You got this. Pause and try. See you soon. All right, let's check the lesson opener and see how you did. Evaluate the expression given g equals 3, h equals -2, and I equals 2/3. Okay, let's get into our lesson and review some skills. So you already know these, but we want to remind you of the vocabulary, just in case you haven't heard it or you don't remember it. We're going to be solving equations. It's an equation because we have one thing equal to another, not just because there's an equal sign. As we solve equations, we're going to work backwards through PEMDAS. So if you're ever wondering like, ooh, which part do I do first? Well, we want to undo, add, subtract, undo, multiply, divide, undo, and so on. So that can always help you make that decision. Let's look at the first one. So the first one, we want to solve for p here. So we have p plus q equals r. So if I want to get p by itself, I need to get rid of that q. So q is being added, so naturally I'm going to subtract it to the other side. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. And that leaves me with p equals r minus q. Now there I use the subtraction property of equality. All right, and then as we look at b, go ahead and do that one really quick. Pause it, and we're back. Of course we want to use that inverse operation for minus q. We're going to add q to both sides, and you have to write it on both sides or frankly you've miscommunicated, okay? So we have the addition property of equality. If I add the same thing to both sides of the equation, it's still an equation. It's still equal. So your final answer here is p equals r plus q. Now I know you guys might think we're a little silly emphasizing all these little steps when it seems really intuitive. Showing these steps is how you communicate mathematically. That is our major standard in pre-AP Algebra 2. You have to show these steps. So C, you might have already done this while we were talking. P times Q equals R. We want to undo the multiplication, so we're going to use the inverse operation, division. So I'll divide by Q. Remember to use that fraction bar. We're not going to go divide by sign. We're in Algebra 2 now. So fraction bar, divide by Q, write it on both sides, division property of equality, and we get P equals R divided by Q. Or, since P, Q, and R are all real numbers, I could use my properties of real numbers we learned before, and I could use inverse property of multiplication to multiply by 1 over Q on both sides to get rid of that Q next to P as well. So if I do that, then I have P equals, well, R times 1 over Q is just R over Q. Last, we see that we have P divided by Q equals R. Well, we want to undo divide by, so we're going to multiply by, multiplication property of equality, multiply by Q on both sides, show it, and then we get P equals R times Q, or Q times R, because what? Multiplication is commutative. Now that we've reviewed the basics, why don't we go ahead and get to something a little bit more interesting, but gee, before we get there, I could kind of use a little stretch.
Yeah, I could use some sun.
Do you want to like help with some yard work?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's get on it.
Okay, we'll be right back. Okay guys, let's find X together. A, B, and C are real numbers, and we're solving for X. So let's go ahead. We're gonna go backwards through PEMDAS. So undo, add, subtract. So I need the subtraction property of equality. AX equals C minus B. Almost there. Okay, A times X. So to undo that, I need to divide. I'll go ahead and divide out A. Whatever I do to the left, I have to do to the right. The whole right. I think we got it. X equals C minus B, all divided by A. Sometimes though, we want a different form of it. So let's have an equivalent form where I say C divided by A minus B divided by A. So now, regardless of which way I see it, I know what X equals. I have two ways I can write the final answer. No point in going this far unless you need to or there's some good reason for it. This is a great answer. Go. Okay, we gotta find x for this new problem. Thank goodness Mrs. Peart did the other one. So x divided by a plus b equals c. Okay, I want to get x by itself. Right now it's closest with that a, so I'm going to get rid of the b first, just like Mrs. Peart did. I'm going to subtract that b off using subtraction property of equality. Okay, then I end up with x over a equals c minus b. Those aren't like terms, so I'm just going to write them as c minus b. Okay, then I want to get x by itself, so I need to get rid of this a. It's being divided right now, so inverse of division is multiplication, so I'm going to multiply by a. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. When I travel over here and multiply by a, it's really easy to kind of see it like this and be like, oh yeah, things are fine, but then I'm only multiplying b by a, not the whole side. So I need to make sure, hug this with parentheses so that I don't accidentally forget that that a is multiplying by everything over there. So then it divides out, x is officially by itself, and I'm gonna have c minus b times a. It's more proper to write that a in front, c minus b equals x. And remember, what property allows me to move that a in front? Commutative property of multiplication. I can just pop it right in front. I could distribute it through, but again, why would I do more work than I have to? All right, it looks like we're really going after it now. And look, it seems like we might have kicked it up a notch. At any point, I always encourage you to pause the video and try it yourself. Then come back and check with us. Let's see what we can do. You'll notice I've split this because there's actually two ways to approach it. My guess is most of us, me included, want to go ahead and distribute that a. So let's go ahead and do that. We have a times x plus a times b equals c. Distributive property of equality. Next, we're going to look at this and go, I need to get x alone. Well, ooh, this is looking yucky, but it's okay. I need to undo addition. And you say, wait a second, but it's a times b. That's fine. If a is 2 and b is 3, 2 times 3 is 6. I just have plus 6. What would you do? You'd subtract 6. So don't let this be weird for you. So we'll go ahead and use subtraction property of equality, subtract the a times b, and now I have a times x equals c minus a times b. So far, so good. Here's a good time to remember that this really has a hug around it. We have to do that subtraction, multiply that, do the subtraction. Before we divide out, that's a times x, so division property of equality, divide out that a. And there we have it, x equals c minus a times b, the entire quantity. Make sure that line goes all the way across, divided by a. If you're skipping any steps, not okay. You need to write this out and make sure that we can understand every single thing that went into the process. You are in pre-AP Algebra 2 now, and we want you to be your best. Let's look at our second option, which actually I kind of like better, but honestly, I often don't think of it to start with. So what I could do, it's a times the quantity of x plus b. There's no reason I can't use division property of equality to start this problem. Let's divide out a. That's allowed. So now I have x plus b equals c divided by a. This is looking pretty easy. Now I'm just going to simply subtract b from both sides. Running out of room here. Subtraction property of equality. Show it on both sides. And I end up with x equals c divided by a minus b. Whoa, you might be going, wait a second, those aren't the same. But they are. So let's look at this really quick. All I have to do now is simplify this one. Remember, we've been talking about equivalents? So we would have equals c divided by a minus a times b divided by a. And what's going to happen with those a's? They're going to divide out. So now we really do have x equals c divided by a minus b. Equivalent, both acceptable. Either method is fine. We just sometimes think of one way versus another. Looks like we got two more x's hidden in these equations, so why don't you take a moment and try h and I, pause, and then we'll check. First one, I've got ax minus b equals b, so I want to isolate x, so I'm going to add b to the other side using that addition property of equality. When I add b, it cancels here, so I'm going to have my ax, woohoo, equals b plus b. Holy moly, those are like terms, same powers, same variable, so I can write 2b. It's exciting.
Now I want to get x by itself. I just have that a being multiplied, so inverse of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide my a out, and I have x equals 2b over a. Fabulous. Okay, let's check I and see if you're on track with that one. Okay, I see x right here. I got a bunch here. I've got that minus d, so let me just take care of that right now. Add d to the other side. I'm going to have a, b, x equals e plus d. X is there. I've got b being multiplied to x, a being multiplied to x. Well, opposite of multiplication is division, so I know I'm going to want to divide the b off. I'm going to want to divide the a off. Why don't I just do that at the same time? Divide off my a and b. Divide everything on that right side by a and b. Boom! Divide out my a's, divide out my b's. X equals e plus d all over. Make sure that fraction bar is big. A, b. Okay? As you're checking your work here, make sure that you have steps like I do. If you jumped from here to here, you're not going to get credit for that. Make sure I'm seeing your math.
All right, Jay, let's go ahead and have you pause, try this one, and come back and check it. Remember, you want to do this guided practice as much as possible. Don't just be copying without thinking or you're not learning. Pause.